Your Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Your Free to Go. We hope you're enjoying your day so far today. And you know, these podcasts are airing once a week. We're not quite sure when you're going to watch this podcast, but we happen to be recording right after the July 4th holiday weekend, which was a great weekend. I want to share with Mark, you know, I just got back from a vacation, did 2 weeks, in a week in Scotland and a week in England. Got to catch Wimbledon, which was amazing. Center court, watching Alcaraz kick everyone's butt. Got some golf in Scotland.
Oh, yeah? Did you lose your balls?
Oh, yeah. Well, I had a caddy with me, and I'm so bad that even the caddy couldn't find my golf balls. But it was fun, though. I love to play those courses over there. Even went to what's called the Royal Ascot, which I had never heard of before.
Oh, yeah, that's like the Kentucky Derby, except everybody gets dressed up, right?
Yes, everyone. I had to rent an outfit with tails and a top hat. Maybe one day I'll share it with our audience because it was pretty cute. My wife liked it.
And there was a horse race?
There was a big party, and there just happened to be a horse race going on in the background. But one of the highlights, besides Wimbledon, of course, golf in Scotland, I saw Sting outdoors at an amphitheater, you know, which, you know, that's his home turf. So there were about 60,000 people outdoors.
Does he still have it?
He does. I think he's 73, 74. Wow. Sounded great.
Well, don't knock that age.
I hear you. Yeah, he's not as strong as you, though. You know, so but he has
not as rich or talented as him.
But yeah, he has a better voice than you, but you're stronger. So I hope you had a good Fourth.
Yeah, I spent it. Went to visit my daughter in rural Georgia, and it was a lot of fun. It was great seeing family, and a
little different from L.A., huh?
A little different from L.A. Yeah, definitely.
And Boca, a little different from Boca
but
too.
Absolutely beautiful. Good. You know, green. It was great. Had a great time.
Oh, I'm so glad. Good.
All right. So what do we got today?
Well, 2 crazy ass cases.
Right.
I'm going to start with one that, you know, I always call it the necktie case, the bow tie case. And the ironic thing is I just was in Glasgow, Scotland, as I just mentioned. That's where I saw Sting. And I was researching, like, what's the genesis of this term, you know, necktie or bow tie?
I thought it was a Colombian.
Well, I thought so, too. Yeah. It turns out, and I'm going to read my notes here, it's actually from Glasgow, Scotland in the 1920s and 30s. That's when this term came up. And it's whenever someone is basically cut with a knife underneath the ear, across their throat to the other ear, and they actually call it the Glasgow smile because it's shaped like a smile. So I'm going to talk about this case where my client was arrested, accused, and prosecuted for giving someone a Glasgow smile, or
we used to call it Colombian necktie.
Colombian necktie. It was very, very serious. The victim wound up in the hospital in a coma for about 2 days, ultimately came out of the coma and survived, fully recovered, has a scar on his neck from this cutting, but he survived it and he is doing well. And my client was prosecuted very aggressively over 4 years. Ultimately, we got all charges dropped. I want to share that with our audience today.
So tell us what happened. This sounds fascinating.
Right, hard to imagine right off the bat because you think, well, police made an arrest, so he must be guilty, right?
Well, we know that ain't true.
Right, just because there's smoke doesn't mean there's fire. And this is a perfect example of it. So it was St. Patrick's Day in 2013. It was March of 2013. And my client is a member of the American Legion. And a lot of people know the American Legion, but in case our listeners don't know, the U.S. Congress established this Legion in 1919, and the whole purpose of the American Legion is to provide services and to advocate for our veterans.
Right.
So it's a wonderful organization, not only veterans, but their families as well. So he was there along with all the members and their guests at this Legion on St. Patrick's Day, and it was packed. It was a busy, busy day. So let's just say, you know, for confidentiality, we're always changing our names of our clients and the witnesses. for attorney-client privilege and so forth. Occasionally, our clients are high profile and that's all over the news, and we can use their names. But in this case, I'm going to call my client Wayne. Okay, Wayne is we find out that this is what the police thought. The police thought that Wayne is there at the end of the day. It's about 11 o'clock at night. The party started at 9 a.m. By the way, it was a really big festive St. Patty's Day party at the Legion. He's there about 11 o'clock at night. The police say he's very aggressive toward this gentleman named Andy. Andy is he's a bartender, and he's kind of the manager and a cook. He runs the whole show there at the Legion. And the police say he aggressively approaches Andy and starts a fight with him and winds up cutting his throat from ear to ear. And they arrest him and charge him with attempted murder. Really serious case. My client comes into me and he tells me, Wayne says, Guy, that is not what happened at all. He says, what really happened is, and by the way, there were lots of witnesses, as you can imagine, because the place was packed. Two of the key witnesses, one was his brother. His brother's name was Kevin, and another was the commander. They called him the Legion commander. He's like the president of the association name. We're going to call him Bob. So those were really key witnesses here. So it turns out the witnesses tell us that at 9 a.m., when the commander and the victim started setting up for the party and welcoming all the guests to the Legion, that the victim started drinking. Drank, and the witnesses say all day long he was drinking, all the way up to about 11 p.m. when this incident started. He drank so much that he was actually walking around promoting to all the fans a daily special of this whiskey, and he was taking shots. He'd sell you a shot, and he'd take a shot. So all day long he's getting drunk. We also find out that he has a temper. All the witnesses we spoke to says he has a history and a reputation for being a hothead. So what happens is my client's telling me that he's like, I'm sitting there minding my own business. It's 11 o'clock. They're starting to shut down. So I call for an Uber. While I'm waiting for the Uber to come get me, this guy who is, the victim, who I've known for years, we're good friends. I helped him get the job. That's how well I know him. And he comes out, and in fact, earlier in the day, they were taking photographs together. They had painted their hair green for St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
They were literally taking photos. I presented them to the court. What I presented to the court actually was a motion to dismiss based on a self-defense argument, which we all have heard is called stand your ground, right?
In Florida, there's a stand your ground rule.
Right.
There is in most states.
Most states now have the stand your ground. So, which we'll discuss more in detail what that legally means. So we showed all this evidence at this hearing when I filed the motion to dismiss. There were pictures of them hanging out together with their green hair, smiling and so forth. So my client's minding his own business, and all of a sudden the victim comes out from behind. He's in the kitchen cleaning up, whatever, and he leans out toward my client and he says, "I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna kill you and your brother."
An angry drunk.
An angry drunk, and he's you motherfucker, I'm gonna kill you. So he's now said it 3 times, and my client doesn't understand what's going on because they're buddies.
Right.
So he actually gets up, walks toward the victim, and he's going to say, hey, what's his intention is, tell me what's going on. What did I do? Why are you upset with me? We haven't even had a bad word in all the years I've known you. Next thing you know, the victim is sitting with a paring knife, which I learned from this case. It's a
kitchen knife.
It's a kitchen knife.
Yeah, it's for cooks.
And he had just come out of the kitchen. So he actually swings it and he cuts my client's forearm. So my client is like, what the hell's going on here? So he then is getting aggressive toward this alleged victim. And the Legion commander, Bob, he sees this and he's like, oh boy, this could get ugly. So where he was coming from to break up this fight was behind my client. So he approaches from behind my client, and this is where the trouble began. He grabs my client to pull him back to make sure they're not going to fight. But when he does that, he takes his right arm and he goes like this, and he blocks. Not only does he block my guy's vision with his eyes, when he grabs him like in a bear hug, he's covering his eyes. My client's glasses go flying. They wind up breaking on the floor. So he's totally blind. But at the same time, he got cut in the arm, right? Now he feels someone biting his arm, and big bite. He wound up having stitches. It was such a serious bite. But with this big guy on top of him, the commander, who was actually a really big guy, the three of them now go tumbling to the ground. But while this struggle is going on, my client reaches down into his pocket to defend himself and has a little pocket knife, about a 3-inch blade. He fortunately was able to pull it out, fortunately or unfortunately, and he starts just flailing it. He's blinded. He can't see anything. He knows there's a guy on his back, and there's a guy in front of him who just cut him on his forearm with a knife, and now he thinks he knows someone's biting him, and he's just flailing this knife as they go down to the ground, and the victim gets cut in the throat.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And the cut, you can tell, it wasn't a swoosh. It was three jagged, because he's flailing and fighting for his safety and his life. And they go down to the floor. So we were arguing all this to the court.
Well, let me ask you this before you even get into the arguing. So what happens after that? How do the police come? And
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm so glad, because I was going to forget this. The first person, one of the bartenders, sees, oh boy, this is not going to be good, as the commander is approaching. And they call the Legion commander. They call 911 and say, I think we're about to have a big fight here. There's verbal, it's getting physical. And you know what you hear in the background on 911? You hear the victim yelling, I'm going to kill you, motherfucker. I'm going to kill you and your brother. Yeah. So it's actually recorded on 911 to
Wow.
corroborate my client's version of what happened. Yes. So no, fortunately, the police are now already on their way, the ambulance. And, no one actually even realized, the witnesses, how injured he had been until everyone was on the ground and everyone stood up, and victim remained on the ground, and the blood was everywhere, as you can imagine. So it was a really scary time for everybody.
so did they arrest on the scene?
They arrested him on the scene for attempted murder. Yeah.
See, this is what I don't understand. All right, maybe a decision to prosecute later on, but right there on the scene, he's cut.
Right.
The story, I assume everybody's telling the story. The police heard on the call
Right.
that the victim was threatening him. Why did they make the arrest right there on your client?
They listened to the victim's wife, who was there. And what's interesting too about that is at trial, and by the way, as you know, our viewers don't, a stand your ground motion to dismiss is truly really a trial. And it's risky for the defense, because we're laying out our whole
admit
case.
that everything happened.
Right.
You're just saying it happened because I was defending myself.
Correct. And I had a legal right to defend
Right.
myself. But if the judge denies that motion,
You don't have much of a defense.
yeah, at trial, the prosecutor now knows your case.
Right.
And it's hard for you to come up with a different defense.
You're hoping the jury is going to
Right,
see
accept
it that way.
Right, and it was risky in this case too, because the judge had been a prosecutor for 20 years before becoming a judge, so it was a real roll of the dice. But the judge, this gets back to your question. The wife came forward to the police and said, well, "This is what happened," and they believed exactly her version of it. And the judge found her in the ruling totally incredible. She made
Really?
lots of conflicting statements, and yeah. But so why did this happen, right? Why the heck would this long-term friend, forgetting that he's drunk? I know we all do stupid things when we're drunk. But why did he go to the extreme of coming out with a paring knife, stab him, and then saying, "I'm going to kill you"? Here's what happened. My client had no idea about this. My client's brother is also a member of the Legion, and he was there earlier in the day, and the drunk victim was harassing one of the female bartenders. She was very uncomfortable with it. She kept telling him to stop touching me, stop harassing me. This was before his wife arrived, of course. Leave me alone. And so it just kept going on and on. And my client's brother got involved. He was also a board member of the Legion, and he felt like, as a board member, I need to get in. This is one of our employees here.
Right.
I gotta, So he got involved, and he told the female bartender, "Why don't you go home, have a night off? We'll pay you. Sorry for everything." And then he turned to the victim and he said, "Look, you can't act like that. You can't behave like that. Cool off, calm down." The victim got really pissed off at my client's brother. Really pissed off at him, wanted to fight with him. A couple guys had to come over and pull him off of my client's brother. This is like 3 hours earlier. And my client comes after this, and he and his brother were so crowded they didn't connect at all. They didn't even see each other. They knew they were there, but they hadn't talked yet. So he had no idea, and that's why this victim was, why he was including my client when he says, I'm going to fucking kill you and your brother, you motherfucker, why he was doing that.
So this all came out at the hearing? You brought this out at the hearing?
Brought all of it out at the hearing.
So tell us about the stand your ground rule and how you handled that at the hearing.
Well, it's a lower burden than most people understand in criminal court. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. You only have to prove preponderance of evidence that our client had a right to defend himself, that he felt his life was in danger, and that he met what we call like force with like force. So this guy had a knife, our guy had a knife.
That's like force.
Yeah, like force. I want to read to you the judge's ruling. This will really, if you want to talk legal. So I have the ruling here from the judge. It was done March of 2017, literally 4 years, almost to the day of this incident. Because remember, March 16th was St. Paddy's Day, and this ruling was March 24th. The judge writes, it was a very respected, very educated, always prepared judge, Laura Johnson. She says, under these circumstances, again, this is after all the evidence has been presented at this trial, basically, the court finds that the defendant had no duty to retreat and the right to meet force with force. The totality of the circumstances show that the defendant reasonably believed that the force he used in blindly waving his pocket knife was necessary to prevent his imminent death or further great bodily harm. Accordingly, defendant is entitled to immunity from prosecution.
Wow.
Yeah. After you hear this, you probably say, wow, what a relief. So this gentleman who was a professional in his community, for 4 years, his career was really tarnished and really destroyed. His livelihood was destroyed. His emotional well-being was devastated. The stress, the fear for 4 years was overwhelming. I was hoping with this verdict he would feel tremendous relief, which he did, but unfortunately it was very, very short-lived because within a year, he was diagnosed with cancer, and within months he passed away.
Oh, my God.
I believe the stress of the 4 years, I'm not a doctor, but I think the brain is a powerful thing. And, I feel, like somehow just the stress from going through that all those years.
What a sad
Right?
ending to that.
Tough
Why did
ending.
it take 4 years? Most of our listeners don't realize that the justice system creeps.
Yes. And this is a little longer
Especially
than
in
most.
state court.
Right. It's usually, I'd say 2 for a serious crime like this, 2 years. This one was 4 because there were so many witnesses. Like there were literally, I think we took about 100 depositions in this case. The place was packed with guests. So it just took a while to coordinate everyone's schedule. There was civil lawsuits, by the way. The victim filed a civil lawsuit. That caused some delays in the case. At the end of the day, he didn't prevail on that lawsuit at all, which was good. There were concerns. The Legion thought they were going to get sued by this victim as well. I think there were threats of that. So that kind of stalled a lot of the case.
Wow.
And we had to wait a good year for the victim to recover to where, he could be deposed. So
Even when you win, sometimes you lose.
This is true. It is
That's
true.
the problem. We represent clients, and sometimes we get them acquitted. Sometimes we get the cases dismissed like you did before a full trial. But at the end of the day, you can never repair the damage done to a person who is innocently charged.
Right. No, it's horrible. You're right.
Yeah.
And that happens often.
Yeah.
Often.
Even in the cases where that we see about people wrongfully convicted of crimes in misidentification cases, now the DNA evidence exists when it didn't exist back then. And in most of those instances, the states or the locality will pay money to the guy who spent 20 years, 30 years in jail. What does that do?
You're right.
Makes the next couple of years of his life more comfortable. Doesn't make up for the 20 or 30 years he spent in jail.
No matter how much they get paid for that. And there's that Innocence Project that'll fight for people
and they do
like
a
that.
fabulous job.
Yeah, they do. Barry Scheck, I think, is the founder of that. I've had a case or
He
two.
was one of the OJ lawyers.
Correct. Yeah, that's when I first kind of got involved with him. But he, one misleading thing about them, and they do great work, and I praise them. but people think they're free. And what happens is, that they are nonprofit, but they actually make a lot of money. What they do is they take very few cases. They get hundreds or thousands of requests, and they only identify the cases that they really believe in, that they can win. And then when they sue, they get a piece. They don't charge the client anything, but when they win their cases and the big money verdict comes down, they get a piece
That's
of it.
only fair.
And
I mean, they've done all that work
right
without any guarantee that they're
right.
ever going to get a penny.
Yep, they earn every penny of
knowing
it.
that they may not.
Yeah, that's true.
So, that's no different than PI lawyers.
Right.
So to speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before you share your next case, which is a great one, I know the viewers are going to love it. I just need to tell you something I thought was really interesting. The judge in this ruling started it with an anonymous quote, which I thought was, first of all, it's unusual, but for the judge to do that. But the quote was, "The trouble with trouble is it always starts out as fun." And that's exactly what happened here. It was a great, fun St. Patty's Day. Everyone was so happy and excited, but it turned into big-time trouble.
A little too much to drink and anything's possible, right?
Right, we see that.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a fascinating story. You did a great job. Unfortunately, your client ultimately passed away. That's sorry to hear, but that's an interesting one. Again, the many interesting cases that we have.
You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427.
I reach back into my archives to talk about what I told our listeners at the end of our last session about Joey Donuts. I was a DA, district attorney in Brooklyn, New York, and this, I think, was in my third year, and I was prosecuting a member of one of the crime families for extortion and a few other crimes. His first name was Joseph. I long since forgot his last name, but it doesn't matter because we called him Joey Donuts.
Joey Donuts.
And the reason we called him Joey Donuts is every day we went into court, he would have his people, I always called them his henchmen, bring in a big box, like one of those 10 or 20 Dunkin' Donuts box, and they would grab it. And then there would be a few left, and he'd turn over to our table, the prosecution table, and he'd offer it. And of course, the first time, I think one of my agents went to go take it, and I said, no, we're not taking anything from this guy.
Yeah.
We don't want him to think that we're going to go easy on
That's
him.
right. Yeah.
It would not be appropriate. So we had that rule. And every day, no matter what, Joey Donuts offered it.
I bet it was hard for that officer to.
Oh, yeah. Well, believe me, we were hungry.
Yeah,
I was looking at one of those chocolate coconut donuts.
Right, and
I had my eye on that.
The cafeteria in the courthouses, they're the worst.
There was no cafeteria in that courthouse. It was like a little stand.
By the way,
a week-old coffee.
Were you provided any security for your safety when you were prosecuting a case like that?
No, but this is interesting because your question is actually something I'm going to answer as I tell you the story. So what happened is I had a witness who actually went undercover in the case, and he was going to be the next one to testify. He was a police officer who was in the undercover division, so to speak, and he was going to be my next witness. And one night, we're working after court, late for, I think it was a Thursday night, a Wednesday night. We're working late to get him prepared for his testimony the following week. It was a Thursday night because we weren't working
Friday.
Mm-hmm. And court was, as I say, dark on Friday. So what happened is he left, drove back to his house in Queens, New York. I left, got on the subway up to the Upper East Side where I had an apartment. I was working in the Brooklyn DA's office, and everything seemed fine. And at 7 in the morning, my phone rings, and this is before cell phone.
Right.
I had a beeper, okay? My phone rings, and I get on the phone. and I find out that my undercover cop had been killed that night. In fact, he never got out of his car. He was found slumped over the wheel of his car with a bullet hole in the back of his head. Obviously, a high-power sniper rifle went through the black glass of the car into his head, slumped over the wheel, and found at 6 a.m. by the paper boy delivering papers.
So wait, he was in his parking lot?
Parked in the side of the house by the curb.
Wow.
Hadn't even gotten out to go home.
So clearly a professional hit.
Professional
Waited
hit.
for him to come home.
I hear that.
Wow.
I freak out.
Of course.
Because now it seems that this is a hit on my agent. I'm next.
Yeah, yeah.
So that morning, the next morning, I run in to the I run in to the DA himself. Now, going to see the DA was like going to see Oz. You never walk down that long hallway to go see the DA.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I was just a line assistant.
Right. You're a young prosecutor.
I was a
at
young
that time.
prosecutor.
Yeah.
I would never see him. And I literally was so focused on my fear that I went right through, right past his secretary, and knocked on his door. And I heard a voice. I didn't even know what he said. I just opened it and went in.
Wow. Well, yeah.
And he had known who I was for another reason. And I sat, he said, sit down. He was on the phone. He hangs up the phone. And I start to tell the story. He says, I know everything. I know exactly what happened. I said, well, I need security. I can't go into that court. I can't go anywhere without security. I need something here. Right now.
Yeah, and
now.
It sounds like that question I asked you about security was a softball, but the truth is, on my honor, I had no idea where this case was going.
Right.
I guess just in all the years we've been doing this, we kind of get these intuitions.
Right.
But wow.
So immediately he goes down and reaches into his desk, pulls out a drawer, takes out some papers, and starts signing some stuff. And I'm saying to myself, oh, ma, I'm going to have a whole bunch of cops protecting me.
Right.
It's like the TV. It's like movies. He hands me a piece of paper. I look at it and I say, well, what's this? He says, that's your carry permit.
Oh, boy.
Carry permit? Yeah, go out and get yourself a gun. I said, well, wait a second.
Wait, this undercover officer witness of yours, that wouldn't have helped him either.
No. And
Like,
by
come
the
on.
way, I had never fired a gun in my life up until that point.
Wow. Yeah.
So I said, I have no use for a gun. I said, you know, I need protection. I need police officers protecting me. He said, well, first of all, we don't know for sure it's the defendant that you're prosecuting. We don't know if it's a hit on you coming.
It sounds like he's the defense attorney. not
And
the
we
police.
don't have the manpower. So I took the piece of paper and I went to this police supply store.
Oh,
And I bought myself a Browning 9mm.
wow.
And then the guy asked me if I wanted a holster. And like an idiot, what kind of holster did I get? Got the James Bond holster that, underneath the jacket.
Right. Love it.
Right?
Yeah.
And where do I go? I go to the police range to now fire the gun. Well, I think there are holes in the ceiling, the walls.
Right.
I didn't get anywhere near the target.
Oh, boy.
Went back home, and that weekend, because we're not having, now we're going to have court on Monday
Yeah, you
morning.
guys, Saturday and Sunday.
Right?
Yeah.
That weekend, I didn't leave the apartment. And I ordered in food. And what kind of food did I order in? Chinese food. I figured there were no guys that associated with him working in a Chinese restaurant.
point.
Oh, no.
Yes.
A little stereotyping, obviously. Monday morning comes, I'm freaking out. So now I'm going to meet up with the guy who probably has a hit on me.
Yep. And are you prosecuting this case with any, other prosecutors?
No, just
You're
by
the-
myself.
Amazing.
By myself. So, and it's not like in the federal courts, back then where you would have a case agent sitting with you. I had nobody sitting with me.
Right.
So I go into
Oh,
court.
not even an
I'm
intern.
waiting to go into court, I should say. It's early in the morning, and there's a knock on my office door. And the guy opens it, and it's a cop in uniform. And he says, "You Nurek?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, we found the guy who shot your," I forget the name of the cop, call him Jeffrey.
Okay, Jeffrey.
Shot Jeff. I said, "Really? Was it my perp?" Meaning Joey Donut.
Yep.
He said, "No. It was another cop.
Really?
He was sleeping with another cop's wife.
Oh,
The
come
other
on.
cop hired a hitman. And what happened is, apparently somebody, whether it was the paper boy or somebody in the neighborhood, saw the license plate of a car leaving the scene at around the time and gave that to the police, and they tracked down the hitman.
The hitman. Who
And apparently, along with the DA's office, I had nothing to do with that, offered the hitman a deal
flip on.
to flip on who hired him.
Yeah.
Of course, hitman probably did life in prison.
Right.
And he fingered the cop in the same precinct who my guy, Jeff, was sleeping with the wife. Well, when I heard that, I hate to admit, I was guilty feeling this way, but I was relieved.
Of course. Yeah,
Why? I wasn't sleeping with the wife,
Oh, yeah. He wasn't coming after you.
and he
next.
wasn't coming after me.
Right.
So I walk into court that morning. I mean, it was a very sad thing, but I walk into court that morning with a spring in my step.
Right.
And I look at Joey Donuts, and he has no idea what happened,
Right.
probably. And when he turns around and offers me a donut, I take two. I take two. Well, the PS to the story is we convicted Joey,
Even without that witness.
even without that witness.
Yeah.
We had a lot of evidence on him. We convicted him. And then when the time came for sentencing, my office wanted me to recommend to the court a sentence. I think it was something like 7 to 10 years. Back in New York in those days, you had ranges.
Right.
And I don't know what possessed me. Maybe this is, emblematic of the way that I don't listen to authority that much, is I just like Joey. And the fact that he didn't put a hit on me, I recommended 1 to 3.
I think that's only fair.
And as Joey is leaving the courtroom, he goes over to shake my, he's got the handcuffs on.
Right.
And he goes over to shake Marc's across to shake my hand. And I shook his hand. And he said, "Thanks, counselor. You're a real mensch." And I said, "Good luck, Joey." He left the courtroom a free man, and I left the building free.
Yeah, he did, and alive.
Yeah,
And
so
alive.
that's the story of Joey Donuts.
And the legal nuance there is with this very important witness dying. Obviously, they can't testify, but if there had been a deposition, if the defense team had taken his remember, we're switching hats right now, ladies and gentlemen. He was a prosecutor on this case even way back when. We're defense attorneys now, but at the time, the defense probably took his deposition, and you could have, as a prosecutor, a DA, taken that deposition and admitted it into the trial under one of the exceptions to the rules of evidence,
Right.
Since he had been deceased.
Well,
You
we had
sworn
talked
testimony.
about actually asking the court. I remember that weekend I did talk to my bureau chief, and we were talking about whether or not it made sense to ask the court for a short continuance so we could figure out what we were going to do, because we no longer had that witness. And then we came to the conclusion we really didn't need.
Right, you had a very strong case.
We had a very strong case, so we didn't need to ask for a continuance. And the court may have denied it, but more importantly, you don't want to keep the jury waiting. And the interesting thing about trials is when the jury is hearing a case, and then all of a sudden there's a break, a long break, a postponement, sometimes they forget a lot of the critical information. Usually that postponement works against the prosecution,
Correct.
not against the defense.
Right.
So, we decided, no, we're going to go forward anyway.
Well-
It was sad situation, but It was interesting.
It's also interesting to me, and then we're going to get Ben, our engineer, has a question. But with the state, the DA, the police, they think long and hard before they allow someone to go in undercover.
Right.
So that decision was made, which is so risky for somebody, and yet it turned out you didn't even need him as a witness after making that difficult decision and putting him in harm's way to go undercover, even though he didn't wind up getting killed because of
Right.
of what he was doing undercover. But you didn't even wind up needing him as a witness.
Right. And it's interesting, back in those days, when they did record, they would have something called a kell, or there was another type of unit, and usually they had it taped either to the leg or the abdomen. It was a small recorder.
That's right.
And in fact, those recorders didn't even transmit. The sophistication of what they can use today is amazing.
So much better.
Compared to back then. So
Right.
back then, going undercover for a police officer or a
Really
federal
risky.
agent was always very risky. And you always had you see it in the TV or the movies, you always had the risk of somebody wanting to pat you down or find
Your
you.
witness was probably concerned he'd get killed, taken out for being undercover in this case, and not for sleeping
Right.
with another cop's wife.
Well,
That was so.
that's crazy.
But I want to ask Ben. He's over there really
You have a
with the
question,
big
Ben?
question.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean, crazy ass case, definitely. But you did mention something that really kind of sparked. You wanted security. Is there a certain level of a case that allows you to get security? Like it blew my mind. He was like, go get a gun. And I was like, wow, okay. But is there a level of like, hey, this is the highest client that they'll supply you with?
Well, when there's I think believable, credible evidence that there is a threat to someone involved in the case, and usually it's the prosecutor or even the judge, and there's credible evidence, then of course the government will provide security. In fact, I was in a case many years ago where I was representing a woman, sort of like a Griselda Blanco, the cocaine godmother. This one
Yep.
was not as powerful, but she was very powerful. And one day I get a call from the prosecutor saying, we have credible evidence that there's going to be a hit on the judge and on the prosecutor when we go into court for the next court hearing.
Wow.
And apparently there were going to be some hitmen, I don't know, breaking into the court. I don't know how it was going to happen because they wouldn't share that information with me. And then I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in court, they're going to hit the judge, they're going to hit the prosecutor. What do I have to, I'm being told I'm going to wear white suits so they know not.
Right.
I was freaked out too. And so what they actually did in that scenario is they didn't bring, the key to it was they were going to spring her. They were going to help her escape and in the process kill the judge and kill the prosecutor.
Oh my God.
And I mean, at first I said, how do you know? And I actually demanded to get the information. And since they weren't prosecuting her for it, they were just protecting the court. What they did over my objection is they had the next hearing without my client being present. They didn't produce my client. They had my client on some kind of video. And it was only a hearing anyway. It wasn't the actual trial. So they didn't actually use security. They used the security method
Gotcha.
by not having her there. So if the information was credible or not, I don't know.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I had a situation when I was a prosecutor where there was a security breach, an issue. All the prosecutor's office provided me was an escort from the courthouse to my car, and then when I got back the next day, they met me at my car and escorted me back to the courthouse. But, once you pull out, if there's someone after you, they're going to follow you and they're going to get you. So they really don't provide a lot of security. Today, there's a lot more to get into a courthouse. There's a lot more security. Judges, you don't even see judges anymore. They come from behind the scenes. They park under the courthouse, very secure. They're not walking through the hallways like they used to.
Yeah, when I first started practicing law as a prosecutor, and even the first couple of times as a defense attorney, there was no security in the courthouse. You just walk right in. There was no, magnometer or whatever they call it. There's no machine to put your briefcase through or whatever. There was no identification you had to show. In fact, the first time I pulled into the federal courthouse in Fort Lauderdale, I pulled underneath. Now it's only reserved for judges. I pulled underneath and parked in a spot, walked upstairs, and then I hear an announcement from the judge. Who parked in my spot? Who's got the green Volvo? It was me.
That's so
My
funny.
first time with that judge. Back then, you could just go into chambers. One of my buddies was a clerk for one of the judges. I would go there, visit him, sit in his office. Judge would walk by, say hello. Now, are you kidding me? You can break into the CIA quicker.
That's true. Well, as always, this was a fun episode. In my first case, obviously my client was free to go, so that was great.
And I was free to go.
And you were free to go. So I guess at this point, until our next episode, we'll thank our listeners for being here and let them know that
You're free to go.
Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Marc and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fromson and Marc Nurek and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.